Hi everyone, it's Jerry. The Siberian Trap is a trap for black out of the Sicilian Defense, Smith-Morra Gambit. For it to work, black needs both knights and queen to directly or indirectly influence the H2 square. Here's how it works. After E4, C5, D4, C takes D, and with C3, the Smith-Morra Gambit, black accepts this. White recaptures, and now the queen knight gets involved. Knight F3. E6 guards against knight D5 as well as paves the way for a bishop C5 move. I will show one line where the bishop wants to put pressure on F2. Bishop C4, the queen gets involved, white castles, the king knight gets involved, and after queen E2, knight G4, the trap has already been set. This setup, by the way, for white, for someone who plays the Smith-Morra Gambit, is very typical. Namely, the knights being developed classically, the bishop on c4, the queen playing out to e2 to vacate the d1 square for the rook. And there might be now a temptation to just get rid of this knight with h3. However, it's a serious blunder because of the Siberian Trap, knight d4, the tactic of deflection. It's a sad story in all variations for white. Taking the knight leads to mate. The queen is hit. If she doesn't move, she's taken. If she does move, we have mate in 2 with first knight takes knight with check, and yet again, mate on h2. However you slice it, if it does get to this position right here after h3, it will be either the queen or king that is won after knight d4. One additional line might run as follows. Instead of h3, if white still runs with the typical move, rook d1, well now follows bishop c5 converging on f2, and there's not really a better move than something like bishop to e3. But it's a sad story still for white because structurally these guys are just terrible isolated e-pawns right here, double isolated e-pawns. White is still down a pawn, black has the bishop pair as well as this e5 square to rely upon for pieces for the remainder of the game. One last line to be aware of is, at this point, instead of h3 or rook d1, if knight b5, hitting the queen and defending against the Siberian Trap with knight d4, the queen can calmly play back to b8, still keeping a close eye on h2, and if now h3, the knight need not go anywhere, because if one trap is not enough, the Siberian with knight d4, another one now springs to life, the fishing pole. And not to mention, this knight on b5 is unstable. At any moment, a6 can be played. The knight can be kicked away from the defense of d4, and we could see the Siberian Trap with knight d4, the deflection, hitting the queen and the knight. Or, of course, if pawn takes knight, the pawn recaptures, hitting the knight, and if the knight moves, yet again, mate can happen in a blink on h2.